Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 18th of October of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the United States of America. We will discuss several statements and articles that were made after Zelensky-Trump meeting. After meeting with Zelensky, Trump reportedly came away convinced that the Ukrainian leader is not seeking peace but escalation. According to CNN citing sources inside the White House, Trump made it clear in a direct and honest conversation that Zelensky would not receive long-range missiles capable of striking deep into Russia. One official said Trump left with the impression that Kiev's leadership is aiming for escalation and prolonging the conflict. Other White House officials told the outlet that both sides should make a deal, warning that conditions will only worsen if the war continues. So this is the end, and this is the final, let's say, statement about the meeting between Trump and Zelensky. And obviously the situation is developing not in Zelensky's favor, but more precisely in the Russian favor. But the Russians now need to find a solution how to get to Hungary and how to make this meeting between Trump and Putin. And as we discussed in the previous videos, most likely the president of the Russian Federation will fly in the direction of Hungary through Turkey and the Mediterranean Sea. So today some sources published this map, and this is approximately the flight route to Budapest, and this flight route will be via Turkey. The Russian president will most likely fly via the Black Sea, Turkey, the Mediterranean Sea, Montenegro, and Serbia. The publication writes it assumes that both Russian and Turkish fighters jets will escort the flight. So I believe that they're going to be a very huge escort of F-16s and Su-35s flying with the Russian president. So once again, if we return back to map, the most likely the president of the Russian Federation will fly using this road. First he's going to the southern part of the Russian Federation, then he will cross the Black Sea, and this is the most dangerous part because from the Black Sea, for example, Ukrainians can always bring down Russians with some air defense systems, I don't know. Then Russians will enter the territory of Turkey. They will move further in the southwestern direction. They will fly through the Mediterranean Sea, and then they will move in the direction of Montenegro, and most likely from the area of Montenegro, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Serbia, the president of the Russian Federation will enter Hungary, where he will met by the Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban. And here, most likely, Donald Trump will wait for the president of the Russian Federation. Obviously, this is going to be a very dangerous and very long roads, and telling the truth, I believe that there are a lot of people in the world who will try to bring down Russian aircraft or to make some escalation or provocation, and if this happens, this can lead to completely unpredictable consequences. So obviously this is a very dangerous road, and telling the truth, if you ask my opinion, I would not go in the direction of Hungary if I were the president of the Russian Federation during the special military operation. It's too dangerous and too risky. Now let's discuss the situation in Ukraine. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of very interesting updates. Right after the meeting between Trump and Zelensky ended, the Russians launched another massive drone and missile attack across Ukraine. The sources are saying that the Russians launched up to 167 air units, mainly drones. The Ukrainians managed to bring down 136, and later pro-Ukraine resources published this map where we can see the approximate roads and which areas the Russians were attacking. As you can see, the Russians were attacking mainly the eastern part of Ukraine, especially the city of Poltava, the area of Dnipro and Zaporozhye, area around the city of Kharkiv. So the Russians were trying to destroy, obviously, the military facilities, trying to probably reduce the forces of the armed forces of Ukraine along the line of combat contact. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the ground, and just a few words about the Zaporozhye direction. During the previous 24 hours, several neutral mappers reported that Russians managed to cross the river of Dnipro at multiple places in the south of the city of Kherson, in the vicinity of Pokrovsk, and the Russians managed to improve their positions to the south of Kazatsk, so too many places were captured by Russians. But as for the end of the 18th of October of 2025, nobody has confirmed this information. So we have just proofs that were published by different resources that most likely are very reliable, but we are waiting for videos, maybe some official statements of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation or so. Anyway, as for the end of the 18th of 2025, the map looks like this. Now let's discuss the situation in the Zaporozhye direction. The Russians continue their offensive operation around the Poltavka fortified area and the Uspenovka fortified area. During the previous 24 hours, the map has been adjusted according to different mappers. The Russians improved their positions around the village of Poltavka. More precisely, the western parts of the settlement were captured. We're talking about these farms and these farms. Furthermore, the Russians managed to secure this dense network of the fortifications between Uspenovka and Poltavka. Furthermore, the Russians managed to improve their positions around the Uspenovka itself. Furthermore, the Russians were bombing and attacking the settlement of Privilne. In this video, we can see how Russians were attacking positions of the armored forces of Ukraine on the territory of these farms. Most likely, these territories were under complete control of the armored forces of Ukraine. The Russians are trying to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this area, and as soon as the Russians are able to do this, they will capture this territory as well. Furthermore, the Russians destroyed the bridge, across the river of Vovcha. So in this video, we can see how Russians attacked this bridge with several drones or with several FABs. 4 FABs 250 attacked this territory, and as a result of this attack, the bridge was completely damaged and destroyed. Most likely, the Ukrainians are no longer able to use this bridge for logistic purpose. This is very important video because this is not the first bridge in the area of Pokrovsk that was destroyed by Russians. I would like to remind you that several days ago, the Russians destroyed the bridge a bit further in the southwestern direction, also with FABs, and this attack took place on the 15th of October of 2025. As a result of this attack, this bridge was completely destroyed. And today we got report that basically 3 days after, another bridge in this area was destroyed by the armored forces of the Russian Federation. So this is a very important situation, because now we see that the southern part of the settlement of Pokrovsk has no logistic. Now Ukrainians need to think how to bring forces here, and after the bridges were destroyed, now the Russians can continue their offensive operation with the purpose to move further in the northwestern direction, with the purpose to capture the settlement of Aristopol, and of course to move further in the southwestern direction with the purpose to outflank the settlement of Gulay Polye and to attack this stronghold from behind. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the city of Pokrovsk. According to information we have, the defense of the armored forces of Ukraine on the territory of the city of Pokrovsk has collapsed completely. The Ukrainians are retreating right now. During the previous 24 hours, a lot of videos were published that reveals positions of the armored forces of the Russian Federation in the central part of the settlement along the railways. We have a lot of episodes how Ukrainians are trying to escape the southern part of the city, but lots of groups of the armored forces of Ukraine were ambushed by Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups. So the situation is very difficult for Ukrainians, and several pro-Russian resources reported that the southern part of the city has collapsed completely. We're talking about the territory to the south of the railways. This information was confirmed as for the end of the 18th of October of 2025 by different pro-Russian resources. The situation for Ukrainians is very difficult, and most likely they will not be able to hold their positions for a very long period of time. Most likely the Ukrainians will be able to slow down the Russians along the railways, but it's just a matter of time, but not the matter of whether the Russians are able to cross the railways or not. Ukrainians most likely will have another 1 or 2 weeks, and then the defense will collapse. And defense will collapse very fast with very huge and very, let's say, painful consequences for Ukraine. Most likely something in this area would be encircled, and most likely the city of Mirnograd would be caught in cauldron by Russians. At the same time, the Russians, as we can see, continue their offensive operation from the north of the city of Mirnograd with the purpose to enter its northern part. This will allow the Russians to tighten the noose around the city of Pokrovsk and the Pokrovsk agglomeration even harder than they have already, let's say, tightened. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the area of the city by the name of Konstantinovka. The situation here is also very critical for the armored forces of Ukraine. The most important updates are coming from the area of the villages of Kliban-Byk and Plishchevka. Today, pro-Russian resources reported that the ministry, not the pro-Russian, but settlement by the Russian Federation, reported that as a result of clashes, the armored forces of the Russian Federation managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Plishchevka. Based on the report of the Minister of Defense, we have adjusted the map in the Russian favor. So these territories were colored and the territory of the village was captured. As for now, we have some questions regarding the situation to the south of the Kliban-Bytska water reservoir. We're talking about these fields and telling the truth due to Russian control over the settlement of Pleshevka, Kliban-Byk. We believe that there are no more positions of the armed forces of Ukraine to the south of this water reservoir. We will analyze the situation in this area, and we believe that in coming days we will color everything along these red lines. So we believe that the southern part of this territory was already captured by Russians a few days ago or something like this. At the same time, the Russians continue their offensive operation in the direction of the southeastern part of the city of Konstantinovka. There are very heavy clashes, but the most important is that the Russians have already entered the territory. So now we see that the cities that we've been talking a lot probably since the beginning of summer, Pokrovsk, Mirnograd, Konstantinovka, Seversk, Kupyansk, Volchansk, now we see that all these battles, all these cities are about to be captured by Russia. So the city of Pokrovsk and Mirnograd, it's just a matter of probably several days. The city of Konstantinovka is just the beginning of the battle, but probably 3, 4, 5 weeks and the situation will be changed significantly. The city of Seversk is already encircled, operationally encircled. The Russians control every single road that Ukrainians can use to support and supply and to bring additional forces in the direction of the citadel, but Russians control everything, and I believe that less than 80% let's say reach the city of Seversk if something sent in the direction. The Russians control the situation, but during the previous 24 hours without changes. As for the city of Liman and the Liman-Seversk direction, during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of updates. The most important is that the pro-Ukraine resources adjusted their maps. They added additional gray zone between Liman and Russian positions in Zaryechno. So the gray zone currently is very big. And I would like to point your attention to the southern gray zone, this one. And according to this map, the 1st sabotage and reconnaissance group of the armed forces of the Russian Federation were spotted just in 2 kilometers from the city limits of the city of Liman, and this is already nothing. This is already the beginning of clashes for the settlement itself. And I would like to remind you that the Russians in 2022 attacked the city of Liman using the same route of attack. They were attacking this area from the southeastern direction, and first Russians cut these TO514 and TO513 roads that allow Russians to destroy Ukrainian logistic, and then the city of Liman fell in Russian hands just within a few weeks. Furthermore, the Russians continue offensive operation in the area of Novoselovka. During the previous 24 hours, additional changes were recorded. This information was provided by neutral mappers. As we can see, the Ukrainians are showing fierce resistance on the territory of Novoselovka, but it's just a matter of time when the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back further in the direction of Yarova. As for this area, the Russians are doing the same thing as they used to do in 2022. First, they will capture Novoselovka, Drobyshevo, Liman, then the Russians will pay their attention and pay their focus to the Izum direction. They will try to capture these territories, including the settlement of Svetogorsk, Alexandriivka, and the Russians will advance further in the direction of the city of Izum. And obviously, we're going to see the Battle of Izum, maybe not in 2025, but in 2026, if the war will continue, of course. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the Kupyansk direction. The situation is very difficult in this area as well. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians continued bombing and attacking positions, main supply lines and roads of the armed forces of Ukraine. Now Ukrainians have lost completely any possibilities to bring forces, and the most important, the Ukrainians have lost possibilities for evacuation. The Russians control the roads, the Russian control pontoon bridges, the Russian control river crossings along the entire river of Oskol. There are thousands of Ukrainians on the Russian side of the river of Oskol, and telling the truth, I'm not even sure what the Ukrainians are planning to do with them. In this video, we can see another episode how Ukrainians were trying to enter the city of Kupyansk, trying to bring additional forces, but as soon as the Russians discovered them, their vehicle was immediately destroyed. In the northern direction, the Russians are clearing their way, their passage toward the southern direction. So the Russians are trying to prepare this territory before further counteroffensive, and I believe, according to all these updates, that the battle for the southern part of the city of Kupyansk is going to start in coming days. So this is going to be the final battle for the entire Kupyansk pocket. If Ukrainians lose the southern part of the city of Kupyansk, we're talking about the territory from the current positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation to the settlement of Osinovo. If Ukrainians lose this ground, then this is going to be probably the biggest disaster for the armed forces of Ukraine since the beginning of the entire special military operation. At the same time, don't forget that the Russians began offensive operation from the east, and now they are moving along the railways, and the Russians are about to answer the settlement of Kurilovka. This information was confirmed by neutral mappers, and this information was confirmed by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, and this information was confirmed by this video. Here we can see how Russians are moving along the railways, capturing one settlement after another. Lots of explosions, artillery preparations, the units, assault operations, clearing operations, and of course the Russian flag, raised Russian flag in the central part of the settlement. So the news around the Kupyansk is tightening as well. Now let's talk about the Volchansk. During the previous 24 hours, very interesting updates came from this area. First, the Russians managed to discover the concentration of Ukrainian forces to the southwest of the settlement of Volchansk, and as a result of attack, the temporary deployment point of the armed forces of Ukraine was completely destroyed. Here we can see exactly how Russians were bombing and attacking this territory. As for the city itself, during the previous 24 hours, according to neutral mappers, the Russians managed to capture up to 80% of the city of Volchansk itself. The Ukrainians controls just the southern parts, and most likely they will not be able to hold their positions for a very long period of time. And the most important is that Russians answered the southern Volchansk citadel. So obviously it took a lot of time for Russians to capture the northern part of the city of Volchansk, but now we see that the Russians are very fast in the southern one. So when Russians capture the city of Volchansk, they will answer the operational space of the Kharkiv region, and this can lead to complete collapse of this part of Ukraine as well. So we see that the Russian offensive is probably ramming up. Now we see that the Russians are moving faster and faster, and we see that Ukrainian defense is also crumbling and crumbling without any possibilities to restore its force and its power. I'm not sure what Zelensky is going to do the next days, but telling the truth, and lots of sources confirm this information, that for him it's better to accept right now the terms that the Russians have. Otherwise, in the future, the situation would be much difficult and much worse for Ukraine and himself. Anyway, let's see and wait what is going to be next, but because not everything depends just on Zelensky, he has lots of people behind him from Europe who can insist on the continuation of this war. And that's it for today. Military of a Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.